Okay, so first of all, we acknowledge that the land upon which we gather is traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq First Nation. Call to order. Any declarations of conflict of interest? Councillor Beck.
Yeah, under discussion item 4E and F.
So on number 4E, second reading to implement a licensing bylaw in regards to short-term rentals. There will be a resolution to defer it, correct, Deputy Mayor Yankoff? There will be a motion to defer 4E. Okay. Okay, so when that vote comes up, you can head out.
Yeah,
Okay.
and F too, I assume.
And F also, you're in conflict?
Well, anything with short-term rentals.
Planning and short-term rentals. Donna, what is?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay,
We had that discussion earlier in the season, and Councillor Beck is in conflict for a discussion on our motion on short-term rentals.
and who's presenting that?
I'm sorry, Your Worship?
Well, it says planning short-term rentals. F, is there someone presenting it?
I think that was to make sure. There was a question from Councillor Duran last week, and we assured him that it would be on the agenda this week, and that's, he had some questions, so I assume it'll be answered by staff or by the Chair of Planning.
Okay. So need a motion to approve the agenda. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. I think we have a number of people in the council chambers today wondering about E and F. I'm just wondering if we could bump that up to the first of the discussion items, change in the agenda, rather than having a lot of people sitting here wondering what's going on. I'd like to clear that up right away if possible.
Any, good? Okay, so we'll move 4F, no, 4E and F to the top, correct? Okay, motion to approve the agenda. Okay. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, second by Councillor Duran. All those in favor? Good. Okay, discussion items under 4E, second reading to implement a license and bylaw. Now, there's no discussion on it, so what do we do, Donna, if it's going to be deferred?
You'll need a motion, sorry. You'll need a mover and a seconder to defer it, Your Worship.
There'll be a discussion on to defer it, correct? Yeah.
I can't quite hear, Your Worship.
There will, if we're moving and seconding a motion to defer the implementation of a license and bylaw, that when the resolution's on the floor, there will be discussion, correct?
Yes, Your Worship, or if the Chair of Planning prefers, she can just remove it from the agenda, I would think. That would be appropriate, given it's her issue. But it might be better in this instance to explain why we're deferring, why it's being deferred.
Yeah, just to clarify, it is not my issue. It's an issue with the bylaw, so it should be discussed.
So, Madam Chair, do you want to move that? Move the resolution to defer it? Need a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Duran. Okay, the resolution's on the floor. Go ahead, Deputy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Planning Committee met today, and there was some discussion around the second reading for tonight's licensing short-term rental bylaw. And it was staff's recommendation to defer the second reading until October 31st because there were some things missing from the bylaw that could be concerned for life safety and a few other things. Now, our manager of planning is here today, and he can certainly give his report as well. But it was staff's recommendation for us to defer second reading. If anyone has any questions, I will do my best to answer. However, I think those questions we will refer those to Mr. Forbes. Thank you.
Councilor Duran.
Sure, I'll try my best here. So we're going to defer the second reading of the licensing bylaw till October 31st. So would that mean that it's the status quo of what we've been doing in the last number of years for this upcoming 6 months? Is that what this means? I'm just looking for a clarification. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Duran. And I think we will give Mr. Forbes the first stab at answering this one, and I can follow up if there's any additional clarification needed.
Mr. Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. So to introduce the short-term rental licensing and the zoning bylaw components and to enforce it, there's 3 separate bylaws. So you have the zoning bylaw, which we put in place. Council approved the zoning bylaw amendments that dictated where STRs would be permitted, and that comes into force and effect tomorrow. So in regard to your question, Councillor Dwyron, what we're deferring is the licensing bylaw that has more clarification regarding the obligations of an STR operator. And we will have the opportunity to review that a little bit further and make sure we get that accurate and correct in regard to what the obligations will be of both the municipality and the STR operator. But I have to make it very clear, these regulations are going into effect tomorrow. So where they're located, you're still going to have to check with the city's planning department, make sure that you meet the criteria that is laid out in the zoning bylaw, and we will be providing the province with clarity on each address that they either conform with our new regulations or they don't, to get a provincial licensing approval. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councilor Duran.
Thank you. I'm a little confused, and I appreciate you, Alex, trying to clarify this. I know it's supposed to come into effect tomorrow. Now, I guess it's up to the STR owners to ask for provincial approval as well as the city. I'm just wondering, like, is our office set up to accommodate all the asks, and are we going to enforce this come next week? Like, I just need help and clarification. Thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. We can defer that to Mr. Forbes.
Yes, I mean, we have the bylaws in place, so we have to both enforce it and provide that clarification to the province. The provincial government cannot issue a provincial license for a short-term rental in Charlottetown unless they've got clarification from the city that it is in the right location and meets the zoning bylaw criteria. The licensing bylaw added some more clarity on your obligations and the municipality's obligations. That's the one that's been put temporarily on hold for some further clarification. But it will be enforced in effect as of tomorrow, and we will have to start writing those letters to the province indicating that you're in compliance or you're not in compliance.
Okay, you want to ask another question there for clarification? These are the questions we were asking at the 3 o'clock meeting, and the whole issue of the short-term rental licensing came up, and that's why it was deferred. But that is just a tool to what was passed last year on January 10th, 2022. Go ahead.
Thank you again for allowing me to ask a question. I know the emails counselors were getting this last week, and a lot of stress was put forth by the owners of the STRs. You know, they're trying to comply, they're trying to do what's right. You know, and I don't think their questions were answered, to my knowledge anyway. Like, there's still a lot of questions. I know we talked about UPEI or Holland College, and we were discussed zoning, how are they allowed to, and bigger operators that have numerous things, numerous STRs. Are all these on the table? Is everything looked after in that respect? Like, you know, it's just a lot of confusion here for me, Alex, and I apologize. You're doing your best you can, but I just don't know where we're going. You know, everything was in place, but the licensing agreement. So what's going to happen to these people that, you know, since we don't have this ready for them, are they going to be penalized? Could the chair maybe express it again, just for clarification?
Madam Chair?
Thank you, Councillor Duran. And I think we'll defer this again to Alex because you are correct. There's been many questions and I think council are looking for some answers. So over to you, Mr. Forbes.
So, Your Worship, you know, the key component of the dealing with short-term rentals was dealt with last year. Comes into force and effect tomorrow. There's two other tools that we were looking to reinforce that decision from last year. Short-term rental, a licensing bylaw, and updates to the summary proceedings bylaw, which is the corporate bylaw dealing with how we prosecute people. So the only one that's being deferred again is the licensing bylaw. You won't be required to get a license until possibly October 31st, but you do need to get a letter from the city that you are in the right location, you meet the criteria of the zoning bylaw, and to move forward. You've asked a number of questions. I've answered some of them from the public. You know, a zoning bylaw is complicated in its nature. When you're talking about Holland College or UPEI, you're dealing with rooms out there that come in under the definition. They're a dormitory. They're not, the bylaw is set up to deal with a person's primary residence. That's really what encapsulates the discussion of STRs. If you're the university and your primary purpose is to house students, you need a dormitory. So they're a different land use. There are different land uses for there's different stipulations on inns and heritage inns in the bylaw. So there's some questions about some other properties in the city and whether they comply. What we'll be doing, like we do with any bylaw infraction, we will look at them all and do our homework before we proceed to indicate to somebody that they're non-compliant. If they're non-compliant, they have to comply. So, you know, will that happen overnight? No, but invariably, we will know, and we have known for some time, where are these short-term licensing or short-term operators are operating from. So we can find them, and then we'll be working with the province to see who's on their list for licensing, who's on our list for licensing. They should be in sync, and if they're not, then the other component of it, which is the enforcement, you know, we'll have to then look at who is outside of those parameters and then start writing letters in regard to, please be advised, it's come to our attention that you are advertising for short-term rental and you do not have either a provincial license or a municipal license.
Councillor Bernard, you kept pushing your button, or do you want to speak?
Thank you. Yeah, I think he clarified. I know.
Could you just stand? Thank
I'll
you.
just confirm. So if we defer the licensing from the city, then you were talking about the letters being written for the STR owners that they would take to the province so they would get their license. Because if we're not issuing a license, the province may say, can't give you one unless the city gives you one. So that's the letter you're talking about that they need to get from the city?
Well, if the zoning bylaw and the licensing bylaw would work together, but even if you decouple them, you still need a letter from the city that you conform, the location where you're operating from conforms to the zoning bylaw. So we'll be still, that people will come in our door, they'll say, can you please confirm whether I meet the criteria in the zoning bylaw? We'll say yes, no. If it's yes, your application is then sent over to the province. These are the ones that have been approved, and then, we will go through them as quickly as we can. The registration bylaw is sort of, it deals with, the ability to apply maybe a larger fee, your obligations as a property owner, and what the city intends to do to oversee your STR operation. But the key component is that the regulations are into force and effect tomorrow, and you still need the letter from the city. The licensing bylaw will be reviewed for further clarity to make sure we get all of the pieces that we want to ensure are in that licensing bylaw, your obligations as well as our obligations when we're reviewing these. But again, those two work better together, but if we delay it till August or October 31st, we are still in the regulation of short-term rentals as of tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's fine. I guess the only clarification I need is when they go to the province to register, the province will be looking for a license from the city.
No, they won't be looking for a license. So all the province wants to know is that, yes, they have come in, they've submitted an application, we look at the location, we say yes to the location. And then they will issue based upon that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Duran, you want to wrap it up?
I have a question.
Do you want to let him go first there, Councillor Duran?
Thank you, Your Chair. The question I have is, we're looking to defer the license bylaw. I heard for one of the things, some life safety issues were discovered. So as a result of that, sounds pretty serious to me. And by working on that on the side, but allowing a letter to be sent to the provincial government to ensure that, are we putting ourselves at any type of risk or liability by not, because I assume there was something enough to defer this today. So what are we accepting as a result of that?
Yeah, okay, so, so what is not in the existing licensing bylaw is the, I just want to get my exact facts straight for you. What is not in there is an inspection or a occupancy sign off on. So those were the two things that were not in the licensing bylaw. So you could get an approval based on the land use itself without anyone actually going in and ensuring that, that it was safe through an inspection, as well as there's no occupancy permit. So those were the two key things that were not in the bylaw, which are similar in other jurisdictions would include that in there, and this one didn't include it. So those things need to be in there, from my understanding.
So if they need to be there, and they're not going to be there, and we're just going to issue a letter, I think that maybe we should be looking at this holistically and thinking we should have all the tools in place, all of the necessary bylaws in place, and go forward at a certain point in time. So recommending that we defer the zoning bylaw for tomorrow, as well as the procurement or the enforcement bylaw that we have not put in place yet. So
Could I just get opinion on that? Donna, could you just, or even our new CAO about deferring an amendment or a bylaw? Either one of you.
Just to say that it's the bylaw is in place. It has had two readings. It's had a public meeting. In order to amend the bylaw, will require all of that plus a recommendation from planning board as well. So a bylaw cannot be amended by motion. by you standing up and moving it, and Councillor Ramsey seconded, it cannot be amended by motion. So it is in place as of tomorrow. That's, is there anything more, Eleanor, that you'd?
Thank
Can you
through
add
your-
something?
Yeah, so the bylaws in place, as they said, you can't reopen that up without going through in a full amendment process. It is worth noting, though, that when the city issues that letter, they are only confirming that the property meets the requirements of the zoning bylaw. If the city is issuing a license, then there's other obligations under that license, such as inspection, safety, all those other kind of issues. If it's just issuing a letter, it's simply stating that it meets the zoning bylaw, and that's it.
Supplementary question, Councillor Matar? Councillor Duran, and then Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, and thank you, Councillor Matart, for moving that forward. And I know we're here today, you know, our both CAOs had said it has to go back. I mean, there's so much confusion here. I'm still confused, and I'm sure a lot of people are. If we're delaying something for 6 months, could we take it back to the planning department or planning committee and start the process just to delay for 6 months until we get all the tools? There's no guesswork of what you should do or should. I mean, Alex seems pretty sure of himself, but I just think, you know, if we're going to delay part of it, let's make a motion, or I guess we can't make a motion, but let's go back to the committee and see if we can delay this until everything's in place come October 31st. You know, if there's a way to make the process go back until we get everything in place, hopefully council would abide by that.
Again, Donna, Eleanor, this is what I tried to explain at our meeting at 3 o'clock to get the clarification. What he's proposing, the bylaw has been amended, was amended for both the official plan and the zoning development bylaw on January 10th, 2022. So the bylaw is in place. And it says to kick in, we gave a year's grace to kick in, and tomorrow's the year's grace is up. What does that mean? Like, it goes as stated, Mr. Councillor Drawn. That's, am I wrong, Eleanor, or just?
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe I'll stay in this spot for a bit. This is a bylaw through the zoning and development bylaw. So this isn't a regular bylaw where you go through a quick kind of bylaw process. This is a bylaw that has to go through planning board. And then once it's finally approved, it has to go through the province for the minister to sign off on. So this isn't a simple bylaw change. So when this came into effect, when this was adopted last year, it clearly stated in there that the bylaw comes into effect a year later tomorrow. So all the operators in Charlottetown knew through the public process that that's what was going on, and it was very clear that there was a year to get to know whether you conformed with the bylaw or not and the changes that you needed to make. So it's been a year in passing to get to this point. As Alex or Mr. Forbes had said, the licensing is just a tool, and it's actually a further tool of enforcement, of making sure things are done. But come tomorrow, the city already has lists of existing short-term rentals, and from what I understand as well, we have the technology that scans, what do they call it, scraping data, that tells us where all the short-term rentals are in the city. As soon as you post it on Airbnb or VRBO or any other platform. So come tomorrow, it's not like the city will come down hard on everyone. There'll be some education that happens first, and then we'll start to move through steps of enforcement. So there will be a little bit of time. It's not a huge hammer that's coming down tomorrow. And the city does want to work with people to make sure that we get them in compliance. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Chair, probably through Alex. I'm like Councillor Drong. Yes, there's a lot of information going on here, but what I'm wondering is people who have STRs now, so they go to the planning board tomorrow and they register them if they're not already registered, and then from there, if Mr. Forbes and his staff approve, or if they're not already listed, then they go to the province for approval? That has nothing to do with the licensing. It's just that they got to be on record, right? Am I missing that, or is that?
Deputy, do you want to defer that, or do you want to address it yourself? Please stand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. I think we can defer this to Alex. Alex, could you take Councillor Ramsey and the rest of council through a step-by-step process of what tomorrow is going to look like for a typical STR operator or somebody who chooses to try and see if they can be one, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Yankoff. So short-term rentals are what's referred to in the zoning bylaw as a tourist home. We've always allowed tourist homes for Charlottetown as a tourism town. It's always been in the zoning bylaw that you could have a tourist home. So what they will do is they will come in, they will pay the existing fee, which is $50, they'll fill out an application for a tourist home accommodation, which is in through the zoning bylaw and links back to a home occupation. So they'll pay their $50 unless we change that fee. We'll go through them. We have to determine that it is your principal residence, that is the primary place that you live. You know, that's where you pay your taxes, it's where your health card is. So if it's your principal residence and it is, your home, could be a single detached dwelling, it could be a townhouse, it can be everything primarily except an apartment. So we will look at those, and once we get the confirmation that you live there, that it is your primary residence. A couple of other little checks in regard to the zoning bylaw to make sure you have the parking, whatever other provisions that go with it. We will then issue you your permit that you meet as a tourist home inside the city of Charlottetown, and you will take that approval and we'll either scan them, or we can with our colleagues, or you'll just walk over to the province and say, here is the approval, I have been granted.
Okay. Question? Question called to defer? Question's called to defer. Okay. Please raise your hand if you wish to defer the second reading. I'll look to do that. Second reading of the short-term rental license and bylaw. Put up your hand. Okay, those against? Okay, 7-0. And I have Councillor Beck is out because of conflict, and Councillors Tweedle and McCabe are absent. Okay. So the next planning, F, have we discussed it? Do you want any more opportunity, Councillor Duran, to?
Pretty much all the questions that I can come up with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's it. If we can't delay it.
Can we just close? Do you want to add anything?
Well, yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
just, I sit here and I know we're trying to do our due
The
diligence.
system has detected that a few lines are still connected to the conference and will attempt to disconnect them. If you wish to remain in the conference, please press star 1. 15.
Are you still there, Scott?
I am.
Okay, good.
Okay, I've been told it's hard to change a bylaw. I just, I feel the frustration of STR owners. The tourism season's coming up. People have booked their places. After COVID, everybody wants to come to PEI, and now we're not going to have these in place. you know, I just feel a 6-month window. I know we tried to work with it a year, but it just seemed to be delayed, you know, in my eyes. So I was hoping that we could come here tonight and delay everything for 6 months. I don't know if there's an appetite for that. You say I can't put a motion on the floor, but you know what? I mean, it takes a little work to do a little bylaw. I think it's in our best interest as a tourism town. You know, building, I know it's, you know, building is slow right now to get the workers to build housing. I mean, I don't think there's a correlation between STR and affordable housing. I just think, you know, this is my last-ditch effort to see if we can come up with a 6-month delay and move it back to the planning committee to see if we could just delay it. It's all I got. It's just asking council to delay this for 6 months. I don't know if anybody like to pipe up and agree with me or disagree. I appreciate it.
Councilor Bertrand.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the same. And, you know, I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. I'm realizing here tonight again that we can't put a motion forward to change, but I think, you know, there's some opportunity here to go back and align all of the tools, as it's called, to ensure that short-term rentals is done in a way that has the proper application licensing and bylaw enforcement, whatever that may be at the end of the day. But we're kind of feeling like we got 1/3 of the puzzle going here as opposed to all 3 pieces. But again, it's I'll just put it out there. I'd be in favor of delaying for a period of time until those other components were worked out and understood.
I think the CAO, the new CAO, has made it quite clear that there's going to be education. We don't have a summary offense system, ticketing system in place yet, right, Alex? So that has to be developed. And then we have to also work on that short-term rental license and bylaw. So, you know, there's a process here, and I think part of that, Eleanor, will be education and working with our owners and operators, correct? Alex, did you want to say something? No. Okay. Okay, can I go back to?
Here, Your Worship.
Oh, John? Councillor McAleer, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Anyway, I guess I'd like to speak to, in my personal opinion, what I feel is kind of like an elephant in the room. I think, you know, a lot council, we've been reached out to, a lot of operators have reached out and talked about, there's a number of operators in the core, the city, the downtown, you know, that have these units in operations, and I'm wondering, is there any appetite going forward for council? And I know this would be a big ask, and as it relates to zoning, the zoning piece, we all know what's coming. Single residence, got to be owner occupied. But you know, would there be any interest on behalf of council going forward to relook at this for these downtown core, the 500 lot area, where we have where there could be possible exceptions made, and I know that's opening up a whole different thing in terms of relooking. I guess require going back to your official plan and what have you. I'm out of my element a little bit. I'm new to this, but I just wondered, is it a consideration for, you know, and having a look at this again for these operations that are in the downtown of the city?
Eleanor Donham, any reaction? Or, sorry, Deputy, do you want to jump in there?
I think that I'd be referring this over to either CAO Mohammed or acting CAO Waddell. It's a procedural operational process to begin the changing of a zoning and development bylaw amendment. And so I think John's question is, can it be, is it possible to be done? I think the answer would be, yes, it's possible. If it's, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's the will of council, but I think I need some more clarification from our CAOs.
It can be done, but it will have to go through the process. It won't be done for tomorrow morning. But it has to go through the whole process again. If you want to start making exceptions or that type of thing, you would have to go through the whole process again, including public meeting and a note and all those types of things. And my understanding, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, the planning committee or the planning board itself can initiate an amendment to an official plan amendment or bylaw. So if you went back to your planning board, Madam Chair, and wanted to look at it again, you could, but then you'd have to come here and ask, talk to council about it as well.
And Donna, I keep saying we have lots of documentation for the last 3 years on this issue, last 4 years. So there's lots of documentation of what took place since 2019 right up until tonight when we're meeting on this same issue. Okay? Councillor Drawn?
Thank you again. So that seemed like a great idea. Can we go back and start a process, even a discussion, to see if there could be some maybe amendments to it? Like, it gets to a point, you have some SDRs here, there's thousands and thousands of people that book them. Maybe there's exceptions to the rule. Maybe, I think tonight if we just walk away, we're just letting people down. I feel that if there was any opening to go back to the committee to look at the zoning, maybe for possible exceptions, that would be something, right?
I hope you didn't misunderstand me, Councillor. They can look at it, but it's still in effect tomorrow morning.
Sure, but if they're looking at it, then the window's still open, right? It's not a closed thing. There's something that could be done. People could give some information maybe that maybe we didn't look at. It's just, I just find that there's, if we work it a little more, just to give a little hope to some people that, rather than shutting it all now, there could be possibility of helping somebody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. And I think I'm going to need a little bit of help from our two CAOs on proper procedure, but correct me if I'm wrong. At any point, any councillor can ask a chair of a committee to take something to an agenda meeting. So therefore, if Councillor Duran is asking me as Chair of Planning and Heritage to add this to the next agenda item to Planning Board, then I respect his wishes and I will do that, because that's what the request is and that is proper procedure. Is it not? Okay.
I'd certainly be happy with that. Thank you very much.
And you'll be invited to go to the meeting too? Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Oh, yeah. We had the meeting today for you.
I noticed that. Thanks for asking.
Councillor Bernard?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just not to get people too confused, and we've heard from the CAO, so my understanding is that we went through all the public meetings. We passed a bylaw. We gave it a year to come into effect, which is tomorrow. Right now, that's not going to change from what I'm hearing. The licensing, there's been some issues with the licensing, so they're asking for 6 months to fix up the licensing part. So the bylaw will go into effect tomorrow. Anytime we have a bylaw, when it goes into effect, if they want to have it reviewed or they want to take it to proper committee, then they can do that. But what you're saying is when you want to make changes right now to postpone this for 6 months, you're back to starting over again. You're back to having the public meetings, you're back to getting everybody's opinions and what we already went through. So clearly, my understanding is that this is going into effect tomorrow.
Yeah.
The licensing is being asked to postpone it for 6 months until they clear up the issues with the licensing. So, thank you.
Okay, good. So can we go back to 4A? I think that's your, Councillor Bernard, it's Environment Sustainability Resolution. What?
Yep, 7-0.
Yeah. Did the resolution for the deferral?
Yeah, we did that.
I didn't sign it.
No, we don't normally sign it.
On that? Okay. So can you just wait for Counselor Beck to come back?
Yep.
Okay.
Moved by Councillor Bernard and second by Councillor Duran, that City Council adopt the attached Sustainable Procurement Action Plan, and the Mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Bernard?
You know what, I will. This is good news for the city, and we've
Yeah,
talked about
floor
it.
is yours, sir.
What's
Floor is
that?
yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We've talked about this in the past at a couple of council meetings. We talked about moving forward, why this is a good thing for the city of Charlottetown, Your Worship, for environment and sustainability. But basically, this plan that everybody had a copy of, read through, it provides guidance, a template, and information on how we can do purchases, Your Worship, making sure we are more ethical, community-minded, and environmentally friendly. So the templates are all there, and you know what? I'm going to give you a little bit of an example. Because this policy, this framework will move on to finance because they're responsible for tendering. So this is the lens that they will be looking at for tendering. So, but one of the things I want to let people know is we talked about the electric vehicles that the city bought. And so we've had them now for over a year. So for the travel we've been doing, it costs $490 for the electricity for the year, which would have been $2,000 in fuel. And it saved the city $7,230 in mileage claims. And it prevented 2.1 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, Your Worship. So this is the type of things they'll want to look at with services and equipment, so on. So it's very good for the city. Like I say, finance, we be taking the lead on it as part of their tendering documents. And as Councillor Beck and I had talked last night, we would like to have some feedback on how it's going. We'd like to have some quarterly feedback, so I assume our department will be talking to finance and we'll be getting some updates on how well it's working. So, thank you.
Any questions? Councillor McKinnon?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question for the chair, I guess, for my own clarification. It's definitely a good news story, Mr. Chair, but partnership with Stratford, what's the cost involved? Is it like, I'm just wondering how the tender was awarded to the two, ourselves and Stratford.
You're wondering what, sorry?
How the tender, it was tendered out to Reeve Consulting for ourselves and Stratford. Are they in, like, how does the partnership work?
First
Sorry.
of all, looks like everybody left.
Pardon?
Everybody left. Not a good news story here, or what? Yeah, I tell you. You know what? I'm going to assume that Reeves did consulting for both, but I mean, we still do our own tendering. We're not tendering for Stratford, they're not tendering for us. But if I'm missing anything, Jessica, you may want to add. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So just for the initial consultation work, we partnered with the town of Stratford because a lot of it can be kind of like cut and pasted to your respective municipalities, but they then tailored certain pieces to each municipality. So in the work that's been done to date out of this fiscal year, that was done in partnership with Stratford to hire the consultants, and then moving forward, we'll be implementing it on our own.
Thank you.
Questions go? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 8-0, Councillors McCabe and Tweel absent. Got another one there, Donna? Or what's this under, Donna?
Yes, you do. This is the first Public Works resolution, Your Worship, which is a rescinding of a resolution, and it's moved by Councillor Bernard and seconded by Councillor McAleer, that the following resolution of March 13th, 2023 be rescinded. That as per the conditions of the public request for quotations for 2023 urban forest management contract, the submission of branch branch manager tree service in the amount of pruning and tree removal, $780 per hour, plus all applicable taxes. Stump grinding, $410 per hour, plus applicable taxes. And additional urban forest management support, $1,245 per hour, plus applicable taxes be accepted.
Okay, Councillor Ramsey, then Councillor Richard and Bernard.
Thank you for that, Chair. I was reading through it. Is there a word that I'm missing, or what's going?
Stump in per hour.
What's that?
Stump in per hour.
Okay, that's what it is, because I read it on the weekend and I said, this almost looks the same, so there's a word omitted or not put in
Per
there.
hour versus per stump.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Richard.
Thank you. I think that actually helps clarify as well. I thought it was a trick that was going on here. And I was baffled by it. But I think it does, on a serious note, I think it aligns with, I think I did ask the question originally regarding, and the chair is not here, regarding the cost associated with an unlimited kind of budget. But I think this does now kind of actually, before it was per hour, and I was quite concerned about giving an open-houred service versus, so now if I do understand correctly, this is now based on per stump per tree versus per hour. Okay, because I did make that note the last time that it could be fairly costly. I asked the question, is there a budget and how was that managed? And I think the answer at the time was, that through Mr. Adams, that they keep a close eye on, they monitor, record. As funny as many times I looked this, I still couldn't see it. So thanks for clarifying that, but I was wondering what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bernard, did you have a question?
Actually, mine was the same, and I read it over 2 or 3 times. I didn't see the difference in the wording, but anyway, it's been answered, so thank you.
Did we add a comma or an and? Okay, questions called. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those against, 8-0, and Councillors
We'll have to talk about that.
McCabe and Tweel absent. Donna?
Moved by Councillor Bernard and seconded by Councillor McAleer, that as per the conditions of the public request for quotations for the 2023 Urban Forest Management Contract, the submission of branch manager tree service in the amount of pruning and tree removal, $780 per hour, plus all applicable taxes, stump grinding, $410 per stump, plus applicable taxes, and additional urban forest management support, $1,245 per hour per tree, as applicable, plus applicable taxes be accepted, and that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Questions called. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those against?
No,
Okay.
it wasn't in the back. Oh, was it? Okay.
And Councillors McCabe and Tweel absent for that vote, Donna.
Yes, Your Worship. That is moved by Councillor Bernard and seconded by Councillor John McAleer. That is per the conditions of the City of Charlottetown's permanent street closure bylaw, the council accepts the recommendation to permanently close the unnamed alleyway that is located between King Street and Dorchester Street, and that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Oh, no. Councillor Matard? Councillor Matard?
Thank you. So in the absence of the chair, I guess I will direct this towards, who?
Who's on the committee? There's Councillor McAleer on Public Works.
I guess I'm just making a statement, I guess, so it wouldn't really matter.
Tweel and Julie.
Okay, so you have to direct it to Councillor McAleer because
Councilor
Tweel.
McAleer, I guess, just a statement. I did attend the public meeting regarding this, and there was a couple residents in attendance who expressed some desires to have that area turned into more of a public space. There's some examples here. They call them pocket parks, walkways, and such. I remember the developer or a representation of the developer being there. And one of the things that Councillor McCabe had brought up was hopefully, and Deputy Mayor Jankoff, you were there as well. So I think it was to do a little bit around if the property was to be closed and sold to that developer, that there would be some consideration potentially given to preserving some of the heritage around that. I think there was some discussion around, might have been a pathway for horses and carriages and such. So there is some historic value there. So I think that, hoping that that is taken into consideration if it's voted here tonight in closure of that street and any future work that may be addressed in that area. And I think the potential developer or whoever might be interested in that as well. So thank you.
Councillor McAleer, do you want to answer that?
Thank you, Councilor Matart, and to your comments, and I wasn't able to attend that public meeting, but did see the comments that that were shared on it, and I do feel have every confidence that the developer that's attached to the property certainly will be sensitive to the concerns that are being raised as it relates to, I'm going to call it green space, landscaping, those sorts of things. So that's all I can say on that. Thanks.
Your worship.
Thank you, Your Worship. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend that public meeting that night as well, too. And I did drive around the property a couple of times, and I'm kind of unclear as to which alleyway, because I couldn't really see anything. There was a couple of different places that were possible areas, but is it more on the eastern side? Like, is it closer to Queen Street, or is it up closer to, is it that little alleyway that's closer to Queen Street than it is up closer to Great George?
Great George or the parish home,
Yeah, so you'd see it going down
It's immediately,
King Street.
it's immediately behind Old Duffy's store, the store that was on the corner of King and
Where the
Queen.
yeah,
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
the one.
Yep.
Yeah.
okay, all right.
And it
Okay.
extends right through to Dorchester Street. But it narrows down to about 8 feet,
It
Yeah,
narrows to 4 feet, Your Worship, I think.
4 feet.
yeah, so that's the one we're referring to.
That's the one.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
And Councillor McAleer, if you recall at the conversation we had, Mr. Adams will be looking at an inventory of all these alleys that exist in the city of Charlottetown. There's a number of them that we'll be putting into an inventory database so that looking down the road, we can create them as living spaces or places of public art and so forth. Deputy, do you want to add to that?
No, Your Worship, you said what I was going to say, which was that, the whole good news, silver lining of this exercise is that the chair has discussed with the staff that they're going to create this inventory, and so that if some of them are and have the ability to become small pocket parks, and with some of the examples that the residents that attended the meeting had examples for, but my understanding is this one is very, very small and wouldn't really fit the criteria, but there are others, so it is certainly exciting that some of those could very well come to be like that. Yep, thank you.
Questions called? Did you read it, Donna? You read
I
it,
did.
yep. All those in favor, please put up your hand. Okay, 8-0, Councillors McCabe and Tweel absent.
Moved by Councillor Bernard and seconded by Councillor McAleer, that as per the conditions of the public request for quotations for engineering services, Hillsborough Hall, new elevator design, the submission of Coles Associated Limited in the amount of $32,128 plus all applicable taxes be accepted, and that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Councillor Bernard, did you press your button?
Just want to say thank you to Public Works Department, and Your Worship, for moving this along. We've been waiting for this for a couple of years now, so it's nice to see it's finally moving ahead. Will make the building accessible, which is, it's not accessible right now. So the question I would have, I'll ask it after the resolution. I do have a question, but I'll ask it after the resolution. I'm just looking for the timeline and when the construction will be done.
You can ask it now.
Okay? Well,
Go ahead.
Somebody on Public Works want to answer that?
Mr. Scott, Mr. Adams is there.
Councillor McAleer, do you want to defer that to Mr. Adams?
Yeah, I don't have that right on top of mind.
Yeah, but Mr. Adams is on the line.
Oh, okay.
Chief Engineer. Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Worship. So right at this point in time, we don't have an idea when we would start construction. We still have our kickoff meeting with the consultant who will be designing all the work. Once we have that kickoff meeting with them, we'll be able to better understand how quickly we can get all the drawings done, delivery of the materials. I know for the elevator components, there can be some delivery delays. There's a bit of a lag to get those. So once we get those pieces of information, I will definitely share that with you, Councillor Bernard, on what we estimate for a startup time for this project.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Okay. Councillor Duran,
Thank you, Mayor Brown.
question.
I'm just wondering, like, I worked at the university there for many years, and most of the places have elevators. If this is just going from one floor to the next, why would we need a design? Why couldn't you just phone up, Tyson Elevator and get them to put one in? Like, what would be the reason we'd have to go pay someone to design an elevator for? If anybody could answer that.
Councillor McAleer, do you want to defer that to the Chief Engineer?
Yes, your worship.
Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the bulk of the design work is actually the elevator shaft. So the foundation work, the brickwork that will enclose the elevator, and all that. So that's essentially what the consultant's for, and then they will specify what type of elevator we would need to meet the needs of this facility.
Good?
Yeah, I'm not going to argue it. It just, if you need an elevator, I would think you'd phone Tyson or whatever elevator company and get them in. I don't see the need for a consultant, but if you say it's going to affect the foundation or something, maybe, I guess that's the reason why. But thank you.
But Councillor Duran, you've been in the building, right? It's a split level, and they did have a chairlift there. And this whole issue came to light when we had a active transportation get-together out there. And one of the participants arrived in a wheelchair, and we couldn't get him up the wheelchair. So this has been going on for 2 years, trying to find a solution. I think it has to be an engineering solution. That's why we're going with Coles as the lowest bid.
Yeah, and I understand that the lady that was there that night, she lives in my ward, and she had a concern over it. But like I said, I know it was a certain lift, and they've had them out at the university as well. So I know in the budget we approved the money for the elevator. My concern was, an elevator company could come in and tell you that rather than us going to a consultant. But it's above my thought process. I just thought I'd answer the question. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess, anytime when you get into construction, especially something like this where they have to, my understanding is they have to expand the building to make room for the elevator, you're going to want to have a plan in place. You're going to want to have an engineered design that's very similar to a house plan. Somebody has to do the plan for the carpenters or contractors to come in and follow that plan. So this would be, to me, no different. They come in, they would do an assessment of the building, they would do an engineering plan of what has to be done to be able to make room for that elevator. Thank you.
Just a follow-up question.
Sure, go ahead.
Had anybody called an elevator company? Maybe they do this service that, if I'm putting in say a flue in a building, I just phone the guy, he comes in and says, well, this is what you're going to need. And, a reputable elevator company, there's only a few of them around. After the consultant comes in, the elevator company will have to come in and determine it anyway. I'm just wondering, would we go to that quicker step of seeing an elevator company come in and you know, whether it's going to tender or not, just to get the process quicker. They could come in and tell you, listen, you know, we need to do this if we're gonna put it in. But again, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just asking the question.
No, they're valid arguments. I know when the Legion, the Royal Canadian Legion, installed an elevator in the Legion, 3 floors, split level when you come in. Otis wouldn't do the design. You have to have an engineering design for them to come and follow that design to install the elevator. So, Scott,
Yes, Your Worship.
so would Otis, or is it Tyson? What's the other one? Would they-
I can't recall.
Yeah. Would they do an engineering on that, or do they just take the engineering drawings that we provide them?
I believe for the actual elevator itself, they would make a recommendation to our consultant on what is the best fit for the building based on our needs. But the engineering consultant would do the design work. So that is the foundation, the addition to putting the elevator shaft in, because we need all those engineering drawings to go to planning to get building permits, and they all have to meet current codes. So that's why the engineering consultant has to be involved. It's all about codes, making sure the work's going to be done properly. The elevator experts are the experts in the elevator. They'll tell us what type of elevator will suit our needs to meet code and to meet our needs for the building. The engineering consultant does all the rest.
Okay. Justin Tart?
Thank you. I think, just going back to what Councillor Duran said, I actually don't think it's a bad question you're asking, and you're saying you don't know what you're talking about. I think it is just based on, it does seem like a reputable elevator company should be able to provide the services of engineering and in determining the structure of that. Again, it just logically makes sense, I guess. Maybe technically, having someone come in and do an engineering blueprint of an existing building and architecture and things of that nature would also make sense. So I think it's kind of one of those things. But I think in future projects we probably should be looking to. We're going to RFP here, but we haven't got to the elevator situation yet. But in the future, we might look to consult with companies about their services as well. And go to RFP and ask for that service. So the service includes both the design and the build, if you will. So it may come out that it is an Otis or the other companies that were identified. So great question. Thank you.
Councillor Beck and then Councillor Bernard. Okay, thank you. Councillor Bernard and then Councillor Beck.
Well, I'm not going to go in circles with this, but if you're going to replace an elevator that's already there, yeah, you can elevator company. If you're going to do construction on a building, you're going to add to the building, you're going to change the design, you need an engineer to design it to get it done right. So, you know what? Yeah, like I said, if you're replacing an elevator that's already in, no problem. But I think when you're going to tear a building apart and enlarge it, yeah, you want to have an engineer. And I mean, the elevator company would be giving advice as far as where that elevator location is going to go and what he needs. But I think at the end of the day, you always want to have an engineer making a plan. So.
Councillor Beck, you're good? You sure? Question? All those in favor? Okay, 8-0. Councillors Twill and McCabe absent.
And the last Public Works resolution, Your Worship, moved by Councillor Bernard and seconded by Councillor McAleer, that as per the conditions of the public request for quotations for engineering services, Hertz Hall building upgrades, the submission of Coles Associated Limited in the amount of $37,308 plus all applicable taxes be accepted, and that the mayor and CAO are hereby authorized to execute standard contracts and agreements to implement this resolution.
Okay. Councillor Duran.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. The resolution is Hertz Hall upgrade. Does this all include the moving of the building to see what's going to have to be done? Like, I just don't think that we should be getting into upgrading the building and then move it. Is this the whole engineering of where it's going to be moved to and what it's going to require? Someone can answer that.
Councillor McAleer, do you want to defer that to Chief Engineer?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Worship. So yes, part of this process is the first phase is identifying the ideal location on the site, designing the foundation, and helping us plan the move for the building to the new location on the site. And then once the building is moved, and then that will be when we will implement all the upgrades to the building.
Okay, Councillor Strawn?
No, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Okay. Councillor Bernard?
That's why you were so close, see?
Councillor Bernard?
Thank
And
you,
then
Your Worship.
Councillor
Tight
Ramsey.
quarters here, elbowed her. I just want to add, Your Worship, that the province has committed some money to moving this building back off the road too. This also due to the construction of the, making St. Peter's Road 4 lanes. So they've committed money to move this building also. So just want to let council know. Thank you.
Councillor Ramsey?
Thank you for that, Councilor Baird. I think you answered my question. I was wondering why the building was going to be moved in the first place, but I believe it's so close to the road. Is that the purpose?
It is now, yeah. I mean, it's our building, it's a heritage building, and it does need to be moved, and so they're going to move it back. I think it's going to face towards Robinson Road as opposed to face towards St. Peter's Road. So they'll move it and put it in on Robinson Road.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, question? Questions called there. Justin Matert, Councillor Matert, all in favor? All against? Councillor McCabe, Councillor Twill, absent.
Moved by Councillor Deputy Mayor Yankoff and seconded by Councillor Bernard that the City of Charlottetown appoint Ramona Doyle and John Redden as the city's nominees to the Charlottetown Airport Authority Board of Directors as recommended by His Worship Mayor Philip Brown.
Absent. Okay, questions called. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, 8-0. Councillors Twill, McCabe, absent.
Your Worship, this is the second reading of the street access bylaw, moved by Councillor Bernard and seconded by, Councillor Twill's not here. Oh, okay. Councillor John, would you please sign that? The street access bylaw. Sorry, Your Worship, I didn't get that. The move by Councillor Bernard and seconded by Councillor McAleer to establish rules and procedures for the application for and approval of modifications to existing accesses and the creation of new accesses to public streets in the City of Charlottetown. Repeal and replace the bylaw adopted June 11th, 2008.
Shall I carry? Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's deferred.
And Donna, do you have the last one there?
I do.
Okay. Just before we go with strategic priorities, communication, intergovernmental cooperation resolution, do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Beck?
Or do you want to put the motion on the
Oh, can we, we'll put the motion on the floor and then, and can you please speak to it?
Moved by Councillor Beck and seconded by Councillor Deputy Mayor Yankoff that the city adopt the attached municipal properties naming policy effective immediately.
Councillor Beck.
Yeah, thank you for that, Your Worship. I guess the whole policy kind of stemmed from, I guess, some recent situations that have happened with regards to some naming rights and how to go about that and what is an appropriate process to follow and looking at various criteria and criteria that we should be looking at when making decisions to name municipal properties or municipal assets, and either after individuals or corporate corporations, whatever it may be. So I want to thank Sue Fraser for the body of work that she did on this. I think it was, it gives us some good guidance to follow. And I think it gives us a little bit of a roadmap in order to guide us in the naming rights process that, well, we have some places that are there that have been named for good reason and various reasons. And I think this will help us, give us a little bit more direction in the future. I do have one question at the end, but I'll save it and see if it might get asked. I'll let other people, if anyone else has any questions for me at this time, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Councillor Tarrant?
Yeah, thank you.
Ward two.
Thank you, Chair Beck. My question is, in reading through the document was, I think for the commemorative recognition to a park, for instance, there's an application process, I think that was attached as an example. My question is can a sitting city councillor be the person that does that recommendation, or does it have to be a resident for a particular park? For instance, I would like to put forward the renaming of a park to XYZ. There's an application process I saw that in the example. So my question is, can a councilman or woman do that forward?
Well, we'll just ask the author of the policy. So,
Yeah, correct
Councillor
me,
Beck,
thank you for your question, Councillor Matart, but my understanding is anyone could make that application. So if any citizen, any corporation, any family member that they want to make a application in honor of. I do know that there are, like you may have someone in your ward that you want to recognize or whatever you feel would be a justified nomination. So I think it would be open to anybody to make that recommendation.
Sue, do you want to provide a little bit of guidance?
The chair has actually answered it quite sufficiently, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Matard, supplementary question.
I think you did a great job answering. I guess you said anybody, so a councillor would be considered anybody then. I just want to make sure that
We are part of that group.
I mean, it could be perceived as, some type of agenda of some sort. I just want to be very clear that it's, if that is brought forward, that we don't get into debate in here as to why are you bringing it forward versus a community or an individual, a family member, whatever the case may be. It's just a point of clarity, and it might be a moot point. But
We don't want a park named after yourself. Like you don't put in your own name. That'd be a little hard for us.
First,
Yeah. You can be a somebody, anybody, or nobody in this business. Okay. Councillor, any follow-up? That's it?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's worth clarifying too that it's because I think what we want to do is honor those that are worthy of being honored, and whoever that comes from doesn't really matter to us. The one question, Councillor Bernard, did you have a question? Sorry, I see your light on.
Councillor Bernard, do you have a question?
No, you know what, I was just going to say that, Justin alluded to it, but that was one of the reasons that we had asked for this a couple of years ago, Your Worship, was to not have the debate in the public forum over what should be named after someone and so on. So this was a more professional way to do it. There's guidelines to follow, and you could apply and see what the criteria is, and now we have some criteria, so it's a lot easier to approach council with a request for a naming right, whether that be a building or a park or whatever it had been. So, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Beck, do you have a question or a summary?
It is a question, actually, and
To Donna?
well, actually, I guess it's kind of maybe it's the thought for everybody, but I can't remember, Sue, correct me if I'm missing something, but I think when we were originally talking about this, what do we do about grandfathering? Like you think of, we have Gordy Griffin Rink in Hillsborough. Are all existing places grandfathered, and then they'll just fall in under the existing? Good. Okay.
The system has detected that a few lines are still connected to the conference and will attempt to disconnect them. If you wish to remain...
So you're all right with that? That's exactly, yeah.
Although I will add, if I could, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
I know Gordy Griffin was a good example. We did put in quite a bio on Gordy Griffin and why it should be named after him.
Yeah. Same as J. Frank Macaulay Park on Spring
Probably,
Lane.
I wasn't around for that one, but.
Yeah. Cody Banks, well, no, that was Cody Banks Arena. That was Mary McDonald. But also, I want to say, I know that Councillor Duran has been asking for this issue or bringing up this issue. So it's come to a head. So I have to thank Councillor Duran for pushing it because now we have something that we can refer to. And going forward, we have a policy in place. Councillor Duran, did you want to sum up with any thanks or want to name a street after yourself or no? Okay. Question? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 8-0. Councillors Twill and McCabe absent. Okay. Okay, that's it. Motion to adjourn. Moved, second, all in favor? Thank you kindly.